JFK Airport, Terminal 4, 2:37 p.m. on an ordinary Tuesday. A Korean mafia boss named Kang Jin-ho walked through customs carrying a brown Italian leather bag. Inside that bag was 50 milliliters of VX nerve agent, military-grade poison capable of killing 500 people in minutes. He was going to sell it to terrorists for $2 million. Not for greed, not for power, but to save his 8-year-old daughter dying of leukemia in a hospital bed. Detective Sarah Park had been hunting him for 14 months. Her younger sister had died from an overdose, fentanyl that came through Jin-ho's trafficking network. This was personal. This was revenge wearing a badge. Then it happened. Rex, a police dog with burn scars and a traumatic past, detected something. He attacked the bag with savage fury. The leather ripped. The cylinder rolled across the floor. Alarms screamed. The terminal evacuated in 90 seconds. Jin-ho stood perfectly still, surrounded by rifles pointed at his chest. The weight of his secret was finally lifted. Sarah approached in a hazmat suit, her hands shaking as she secured the VX. One hairline fracture. 30 more seconds and everyone in that terminal would have died choking on their own fluids. She looked at the man who had destroyed her family. He looked back at the woman about to destroy his. And then Jin-ho said 5 words that changed everything. "My daughter is 8 years old." He showed her the photo. A little girl with no hair, wearing a pink hospital cap, smiling with missing front teeth. Innocent. Dying. Unaware her father had been willing to become a mass murderer for her. What Sarah did next, what choice she made between justice and mercy, and what happened to that little girl, will make you question everything you believe about right and wrong. Before we begin this story, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is there. If stories about karma, love, and hidden truths move you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The fluorescent lights of JFK Terminal 4 hummed with that particular frequency that makes tired travelers even more exhausted. It was 2:37 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, the kind of ordinary moment when history decides to reveal itself. Kang Jin-ho walked through the customs line with the practiced calm of a man who had crossed borders 217 times without incident. His Italian leather bag, custom-made in Milan 3 years prior, hung from his right hand with the weight of $4.2 million in consequences. He looked like any other businessman returning from Seoul, Armani suit, perfectly pressed. Documents for his import-export company, all legitimate on their surface. But Jin-ho knew something the other travelers did not know. He knew that in exactly 43 minutes, if everything went according to plan, he would walk out of this airport and make a phone call that would save his daughter's life. Min-saw was 8 years old. She had been fighting leukemia for 2 years. The experimental treatment in the United States cost $2 million. The insurance companies had denied coverage. The hospitals had turned them away. So Jin-ho had made a choice that fathers are not supposed to make. What the businessman in line behind him did not know, what the exhausted mother juggling 2 children did not know, what the college students returning from spring break did not know, was that 50 milliliters of VX nerve agent rested in a false bottom compartment 6 inches from their bodies. Military grade. Weapons grade. The kind of poison that Syrian dictators used on their own people. The kind that killed in minutes, choking the nervous system until the body simply forgot how to breathe. Jin-ho had told himself many things to sleep at night. He told himself the buyers would never actually use it. He told himself it was just business. He told himself that Minso's life mattered more than hypothetical victims. He told himself he was still a good father, even if he could no longer claim to be a good man. 3 floors above, in a monitoring room that smelled of burnt coffee and electronic equipment, Detective Sarah Park watched 6 screens simultaneously. She had been hunting Kang Jin-ho for 14 months, ever since an anonymous tip had landed on her desk. The tip had come from a woman Jin-ho had loved and then abandoned. A woman angry enough to betray him, but too afraid to testify. Sarah understood betrayal. She understood what it meant to lose someone you loved to the poison trade. Her sister Julie had been 22 when the overdose took her. The fentanyl that killed her had been trafficked through a network that led, eventually, to Jin-ho's organization. Sarah spoke into her radio, her voice steady despite the adrenaline beginning to flood her system. Target is in queue. Position Rex at checkpoint 3. Beside her, K9-47 Rex shifted his weight, his ears rotating toward the sound of her voice. The German Shepherd was 5 years old, with burn scars on his muzzle from a warehouse raid 2 years earlier. Those scars had come from a meth lab explosion. The chemicals had seared his nose, but somehow his sense of smell had only intensified afterward, as if trauma had rewired his instincts into something more acute, more unforgiving. Rex had been abused before the police rescued him, beaten by the very kind of men he now hunted. He remembered the smell of chemicals. He remembered fear. And when he caught that particular combination of scents, something ancient and primal activated in his brain, something that training could not fully control. Next! The customs agent's voice cut through the ambient noise. Jin-ho stepped forward. He smiled politely. His heart rate, if measured, would have appeared completely normal. He had trained himself for this moment. Control the breathing, control the micro-expressions, control everything. Sarah descended the stairs, Rex at her heel. She positioned herself 30 feet away, watching. She could see Jin-ho's hand on the bag. She could see the almost imperceptible tension in his shoulders. She made a small gesture. Rex began his routine sweep, moving between travelers, sniffing luggage with mechanical precision. Then Rex stopped. His entire body went rigid. A low growl emerged from somewhere deep in his chest, a sound that made nearby travelers instinctively step backward. His eyes locked onto the brown leather bag. Jin-ho felt it before he saw it. That primal recognition when a predator selects its prey. He looked down. The dog was staring at him. No, not at him. At the bag. Sarah's hand moved to her holster. Sir, please place your bag on the ground. Jin-ho's mind calculated possibilities at light speed. Run, fight, lie, comply. But he knew. The dog knew. And in that crystallized moment, 14 months of perfect planning dissolved into nothing. He lowered the bag slowly. Rex barked once, a sound like a gunshot in the crowded terminal. Then the dog attacked. The attack happened in slow motion and all at once. Rex's jaws clamped onto the leather bag with a force that ripped it from Jin-ho's hand. The dog shook his head violently, the way wolves tear into prey, the way survival itself moves when instinct overrides training. The expensive Italian leather split like paper. Contents scattered across the polished airport floor. A laptop, documents, clothing. And then, rolling across the tile with terrible inevitability, a small metal cylinder no larger than a travel-size cologne bottle. Sarah saw it, and her blood turned to ice water. She knew that shape. She had seen it in federal training manuals. Evacuate! Evacuate now! Hazmat Protocol Alpha! Her voice carried the kind of authority that bypasses rational thought. and triggers pure survival response. Security guards who had been standing casually seconds before suddenly moved with military precision. Alarms began to sound, not the gentle chime of boarding calls, but the harsh mechanical shriek of genuine emergency. Travelers ran. They did not know why they were running. They did not need to know. Terror is contagious, spreading faster than any virus. A mother grabbed her children. An elderly man abandoned his wheelchair. College students trampled over luggage in their desperate flight toward exits that suddenly seemed impossibly far away. Within 90 seconds, Terminal 4's customs area had transformed from mundane bureaucracy into controlled chaos. But Jinho did not run. He stood perfectly still, watching the cylinder roll to a stop against a support pillar. He watched Sarah approach it with her weapon drawn, her face visible through the growing distance between them. He watched federal agents in tactical gear surround him, their rifles trained on his chest. And he felt something he had not felt in 23 years of criminal enterprise. He felt relief. The terrible weight of the secret was no longer his alone to carry. The choice had been taken from him. Minsaw would die, probably. He would spend the rest of his life in a federal supermax prison, probably. But at least he would not have to live with what he had been willing to do. At least he would not have to see his daughter's face and know that her life had been purchased with 500 other lives. Sarah knelt beside the cylinder, her hands shaking inside hazmat gloves that had materialized from an emergency kit. She had done the training. She knew the protocols. But training is different when the substance in front of you could kill everyone in a half-mile radius if the seal had cracked. She examined it carefully, her breath fogging the inside of her respirator mask. The container was intact. Barely. A hairline fracture ran along one side, so thin it was almost invisible. Another 30 seconds of Rex's assault, and it would have ruptured. She looked up at Jinho. Their eyes met across the emptied terminal. She saw something in his face that she had not expected to see. Not defiance, not hatred, just exhaustion. The kind of bone-deep weariness that comes from carrying an impossible burden for too long. VX nerve agent, she said, her voice muffled by the mask, but still clear enough. Military grade. Do you understand what you were carrying? Do you understand what this does to people? Jinho nodded slowly. Of course he understood. He had researched it thoroughly. He knew that VX attacked the nervous system, that it caused convulsions, that it made grown men lose control of their bodily functions, that it drowned them in their own fluids as their lungs filled with secretions they could no longer cough up. He knew that death took between 1 and 10 minutes, depending on exposure. He knew that there was no dignity in it, no peaceful fading, just agony. I need to make a phone call, he said quietly. His English was perfect, accentless. My daughter is 8 years old. She has acute lymphoblastic leukemia. She is at Mount Sinai Hospital right now, waiting for me to tell her that I have the money for her treatment. Sarah felt something crack inside her chest. She thought of Julie. She thought of the last time she had seen her sister alive, thin and desperate, promising this would be the last time, promising she would get clean. She thought of the funeral. She thought of their mother, who still kept Julie's bedroom exactly as it had been, as if preserving the past could somehow resurrect it. You were going to kill hundreds of people to save one child, Sarah said. It was not a question. It was an accusation and an acknowledgement, and a horrible understanding all at once. Jinho looked at her with eyes that had seen too much. Tell me you would not do the same for someone you loved, Tell me, Detective Park, and I will believe you are a better person than I am. She could not tell him that. She wanted to. She opened her mouth to say the words that a police officer is supposed to say, the words about law and justice and the greater good. But the words died in her throat because she knew, with terrible certainty, that she could not promise what she would or would not do if it were someone she loved dying slowly in a hospital bed. The silence that followed was not empty. It was filled with the hum of ventilation systems working overtime, the crackle of radio communications, the distant sound of sirens approaching. 4 federal agents kept their weapons trained on Jin-ho, but even they seemed uncertain now, as if the man in front of them had transformed from monster to something more complicated, something that did not fit neatly into the categories of good and evil that made their jobs possible. Sarah stood up slowly, the VX container now secured in a specialized containment unit. She removed her respirator mask. Her face was pale, streaked with sweat. She walked toward Jin-ho with measured steps, each one a decision, each one a choice between the person she was trained to be and the person she actually was. Rex followed her, his aggression now replaced with an eerie calm, as if he too understood that the immediate danger had passed, that whatever came next would be slower, more bureaucratic, but no less devastating. "Show me," Sarah said. "Show me your daughter." Jin-ho reached slowly for his phone, his movements careful, conscious of the weapons still pointed at his vital organs. He unlocked the screen and turned it toward Sarah. The photo showed a little girl with a round face and no hair, wearing a pink hospital cap decorated with cartoon characters. She was smiling. Her smile was missing 2 front teeth. She looked like any child, innocent and unaware that her father had been willing to become a mass murderer for her. Sarah stared at the photo for a long time. She thought about the victims who would have died if Rex had not detected the VX. She thought about the mothers who would have lost children, the children who would have lost parents, the ripple of grief that would have spread outward from this terminal like a stone thrown into still water. She thought about how those hypothetical victims were just as real as Minsul, just as deserving of life, just as loved. But she also thought about what desperation does to human judgment. She thought about how the medical system in the wealthiest nation on earth could look at a dying child and say, "No, sorry, we cannot help you. Your suffering is not profitable enough." She thought about how insurance companies employed entire departments dedicated to finding reasons to deny coverage, how they calculated that a certain percentage of people would simply give up and die rather than fight through the appeals process. "Her name is Minsul," Jin-ho said quietly. "It means bright and beautiful. Her mother died when she was 3. Cancer, ironically. I raised her alone. I kept her away from my business. She thinks I sell machine parts. She does not know what I really am. I wanted to keep her innocent for as long as possible." "How long does she have?" Sarah asked. The question came out before she could stop it, before the professional part of her brain could remind her that this information was not relevant to the case, that sympathizing with the suspect was a tactical error. Without the treatment? 4 months, maybe 6? The doctors said there is an experimental protocol at Johns Hopkins, engineered T cells that attack the cancer. 92% success rate in children her age. But the insurance companies said it was experimental, not proven, not covered. The out-of-pocket cost is $2 million. I have been saving for 2 years. I sold everything. My cars, my properties, everything I owned legally. But it was not enough. So I made arrangements with people I swore I would never do business with again. Terrorists. True believers. The kind of men who would actually use what I was selling. Sarah felt sick. She felt angry. She felt helpless. because she knew that this story was not unique. She knew that all across America, people were making impossible choices because healthcare was not a right, but a commodity, because pharmaceutical companies charged whatever the market would bear, because the system was designed to extract maximum profit from human suffering. "You know I have to arrest you," she said finally. "You know you are going to prison for the rest of your life, probably a federal supermax. 23 hours a day in a cell. No contact with other prisoners. No windows. Just walls and silence until you die." Jinho nodded. "I know. But before you take me, I need you to understand something. I need you to understand that I am not asking for mercy. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am asking you to make sure Minso knows that her father loved her. That everything I did, right or wrong, was because I could not imagine a world without her in it." Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out her own phone. She pulled up a photo of Julie, young and healthy, before the addiction had carved hollows into her face. "My sister," she said. "She died 3 years ago. Fentanyl overdose. The dealer who sold it to her got it from a supplier. That supplier got it from a distributor. That distributor got it from an organization that your organization did business with. So when you talk about love, when you talk about doing anything for family, I want you to know that I understand. I understand exactly what you took from me." Jinho's face crumpled. For the first time since Rex had attacked, tears formed in his eyes. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I am so sorry." "Sorry does not bring her back," Sarah said, but her voice was not harsh. It was simply factual, the way someone might state that water is wet or that gravity pulls downward. Sorry does not undo any of this. 3 weeks passed like a slow-motion collapse. Jinho was processed through the federal justice system with mechanical efficiency. 15 charges: terrorism, weapons trafficking, conspiracy to commit mass murder. His lawyer, a public defender who looked exhausted before the case even began, told him the prosecution was seeking the death penalty. Jinho nodded. He had expected this. He had accepted this the moment Rex's jaws had closed on his bag. Sarah sat in her office on a Thursday evening, the city lights of New York glowing through her window like a circuit board of human ambition and human failure. The case was closed. Her career was made. The mayor had called personally to congratulate her. The director of the FBI had sent a letter of commendation. She would be promoted within the month, given her choice of assignments, held up as an example of exceptional police work. But she felt no triumph. She felt hollow, scooped out, as if solving the case had required her to surrender some essential part of herself that she could not name but could feel was missing. She had done something she was not supposed to do. She had investigated Minso's medical situation. She had called Mount Sinai Hospital, pretending to be a family friend. The nurse had been kind, but honest. Without the experimental treatment, Minso had perhaps 4 months to live. The standard chemotherapy had stopped working. The cancer was adapting faster than the doctors could respond. The little girl with the pink hospital cap and missing front teeth was dying, and there was nothing anyone could do about it, unless someone could produce $2 million that did not exist. Sarah looked at her bank account. $31,000. 3 years of saving, money she had put aside for a future that felt increasingly hypothetical, for a version of herself that was not defined entirely by her sister's death and her own guilt for not saving her. She made the transfer before she could talk herself out of it. $25,000 to a nonprofit organization that funded experimental cancer treatments for children. The donation was anonymous. The designation specified Min Sol Kang by hospital and patient number. It would not be enough. It would not save the child. But it was something. It was an acknowledgement that Min-sol was not her father's sins, that innocence still mattered, even when everything else had gone wrong. In his cell at the Metropolitan Detention Center, Jin-ho received a letter. Official letterhead, a charitable foundation he had never heard of, had made a substantial donation toward his daughter's treatment. The amount was not enough for the full protocol, but it was a beginning. It was hope where there had been none. He read the letter 3 times, his hands shaking. He did not know who had done this. He did not know why. But he understood that somewhere in the machinery of justice and punishment, someone had seen his daughter as more than collateral damage. Someone had chosen mercy when the system demanded only retribution. Jin-ho wrote 2 letters that night. The first was to Min-sol. He told her everything. He explained what he had done and why he had done it. He explained that he was a criminal, that he had hurt people, that he deserved his punishment. But he also told her that love was real, that his love for her was the most real thing he had ever known, even if that love had led him to commit monstrous acts. He told her that she should live differently, that she should find ways to help people rather than hurt them, that she should break the cycle that had consumed him. The second letter was to Sarah Park. He did not know if she would read it. He did not know if it would ever leave the prison. But he wrote it anyway, because some things need to be said even if no one listens. Detective Park, he wrote, I know you lost your sister to the poison trade. I know you blame men like me. You are right to blame us. We are guilty. But I want you to know that the system that made your sister desperate enough to use drugs and the system that made me desperate enough to sell weapons to terrorists are the same system. We are all trapped in a machine that values profit over people, that measures human worth in dollars, that tells us our loved ones are expendable if we cannot afford to save them. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not deserve it. But I hope you will fight to change this system so that other fathers do not have to make the choices I made, so that other sisters do not die like yours did. That is the only justice that matters now. Sarah received the letter 4 days later. She read it in her apartment, alone, with a glass of wine she did not drink and a photo of Julie on the table beside her. She read it twice. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer with other things she could not throw away, but could not bear to look at regularly. 2 months later, Min-so received her first treatment at Johns Hopkins. The nonprofit had raised enough money through a viral social media campaign. A journalist had written about her case, carefully leaving out her father's crimes, focusing only on the injustice of a child denied life-saving medicine. Strangers had donated, thousands of them, small amounts that added up to miracles. The engineered T-cells began their work, hunting cancer through her bloodstream with precision that nature alone could never achieve. Her prognosis improved. Not a guarantee, but a chance. Sometimes a chance is enough. Jin-ho heard the news through his lawyer. He cried for an hour in his cell, his face pressed against the concrete wall, his body shaking with something that was neither happiness nor grief, but some third emotion that exists only in the space between redemption and damnation. Sarah stood at her sister's grave on a cold morning in November. She placed flowers on the headstone. She told Julie about Min-so, about Jin-ho, about the impossible complexity of trying to be good in a world designed to make goodness difficult. She told her sister that she was sorry for not seeing the desperation sooner, sorry for not understanding that addiction is not a moral failure, but a medical emergency, sorry for everything the system had done to both of them. I am going to try to fix this, Sarah said to the stone that could not answer. I do not know how, but I am going to try. She walked away from the grave with Rex beside her. The dog had been officially assigned to her after the incident. They understood each other now, both of them scarred, both of them trying to do good work in a broken world, both of them knowing that sometimes the line between hero and villain is just a matter of which side of desperation you happen to be standing on when the moment of choice arrives. The story ends here, but the questions do not. How many other Jinhos are out there right now, making terrible calculations? How many other Minsos are dying because medicine is rationed by wealth? How many other Julies are turning to poison because pain is cheaper than treatment? These questions have no easy answers, but they demand to be asked. They demand to be faced. They demand that we decide what kind of world we want to live in and what we are willing to sacrifice to create it. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever been forced to choose between doing what's right and protecting someone you love? Have you ever judged someone as a monster, only to discover they were just as broken and desperate as you? Have you ever realized that the systems we trust to protect us are actually designed to fail the most vulnerable among us? Tell us about your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about justice, redemption, and the terrible cost of love, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.